Okay, so what we're going to do today is I'm going to do a quick demo for you for iteration 2 and iteration 3. Iteration 2, we have a few of the gear teeth, the numbers of the gear teeth known. We only have 2 speeds known and 1 torque known. Okay, so with what's on the screen, the very first thing that I need to do is to calculate N2. So I'm going to go ahead on my screen and write some formulas here. N2 over N1 is equal to S1 over S2. And when I solve for N2, I'm going to get S1 over S2 times N1. Okay, so I'm going to use that formula to my spreadsheet. Okay, so I'm going to go equals. I'm going to go ahead and put in parentheses my 2 speeds. And then I'm going to multiply my N1. And there we go. Now you can see that what I have is I have a fraction of a tooth. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to insert a cell and then I'm going to go ahead and have to round up to this. So I'm going to just go ahead and say equals round up this cell to no decimal places. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and cross this one out. That way we know that we can't use it. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to have to go ahead and do the same thing for this. I'm going to have to recalculate that. So I'm going to go ahead and write another equation over here for my S2. So I have S2 over S1 is going to equal N1 over N2. And when I'm doing this, my S2 is going to be N1 over N2 times S1. And I'll go ahead and do that calculation very quickly. N1 divided by N2 times my S1. And there we go. And I'll go ahead and I'll cross this out. Okay. Now this speed is going to also be equivalent because S2 and S3 are in the same. So I went ahead and copied that down. And my next thing I'm going to calculate is going to be my S4. So if I go ahead and write a formula for that, S4 over S3 equals N3 over N4. And I'm going to go ahead and solve here. N3 over N4 times S3. Okay? Equals my N3 divided by my N4 times my S3. And there is my speed. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to round this to whole decimal places or whole numbers. No decimal places there. And there we go. Okay. Now the next step I need to do is to go ahead and solve for all my torque values for this problem. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. If I take a look at this, so I'll see my T3 is the next thing I need to solve for. And I'm going to use my number of teeth to help me with that. So T3 over T4 is N3 over N4. And when I solve for my T3, here's my equation, N3 over N4 times T4. Okay? And I'll use that to go ahead and calculate my values. And there we go. Okay? It's already to do decimal places, so that's good. And I'm going to go ahead and make that equivalent here. And that's good to go. Now, the last thing I need to do is I need to solve for T1. So that'll be very easy. T1 over T2 equals the N1 over N2. And then I'll solve using my equation T1 equals N1 over N2 times T2. So I'll do my equals, my N1 divided by, be very careful, I have to pick my cell that I rounded up my teeth, okay? And there we go here, and then that's what I've got, and I just got to format that to 2 decimal places, and then I'm good to go for this one. There we go. Okay, so that is iteration 2. Now the last thing I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and do iteration 3. Now here is where I have N1, N2, and 3. I have the 2 final speeds, and I have the beginning torque. Okay, so the first cell that I'm going to solve for is this N4. Okay, that's the very first one I'm going to do. So if I go ahead and write my equation down, N4 over N3 is going to be equal to S3 over S4. And I solve for that. I have S3 over S4 times N3. Go ahead and put that in there for me. And you can see that I already have it crossed out because I know it's going to round it. So I went ahead and let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and do this times N3. There we go. Okay, and let me go ahead and reformat this cell so it is 2 decimal places. And it looks like it's actually a nice round number. So we don't actually need to cross that out. So I'll change that cell so it doesn't strike it out. And then I can go back and it's already 66.00. So I will go ahead and take care of that. Okay. Now you do probably want to go ahead and build that in there since not all cells or not all gear geometries will give you a nice round number. So we probably should go back and change that back. Format cells number. And then we're going to go ahead and strike through that. And then just go ahead and set that up again here. Okay? Okay, so I'll have to redo my formulas here. Just clean these up, and we're going to have to go back and resolve for that. We're going to go ahead and build in the roundup here equals roundup here to 0 decimal places, and we'll display that with no decimal places. So again, in this case, with these particular numbers, it is fine. But we need to make sure that in case it doesn't, that we've already accounted for that. Okay? And if that's the case, then our speeds are going to have to change. Okay? Well, we'll leave these speeds alone and we'll go ahead and equal, make that equivalent. Now, the last thing I'll have to calculate is my beginning speed here. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and set up an equation for that. S1 over S2 is equal to N2 over N1. And if I go ahead and solve for S1, I'm going to have N2 over N1 times S2. Okay? And I'll go ahead and calculate that out. N2 over N1 times S2. And there's my speed. But I'm going to go ahead and reformat that to go to no decimal places because that's how we like to format our speed. Okay? Now the last thing I need to do, or the last set of calculations I need to do, are for my torques. So I'm going to go ahead and get those set up now. Those will be pretty easy to do. Okay, so I have T1, I need to find T2. And I always like to use the N's for these. So I'll say N2 over N1. My torque 2 is going to be N2 over N1 times T1. And I'll go ahead and do my calculations here. My N2 over N1 times my T1. Okay? And I know T2 and T3 are on the same shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and make them equivalent. And then my last formula, or my last calculation, I'm going to do the same thing with my numbers for T3 and T4. So I'm going to go ahead and see T4 over T3 equals N4 over N3. And I'll go ahead and solve that out. And I have equals my N4, okay, which is my rounded value, times my torque there. And there we go. And we are finished.